All right, guys. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of At the Table by Urban Forex. With me here today, I have on the panel Ian tuning in from Australia.
Hey everybody.
Hey, we got Lucas tuning in from Malaysia.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And we have Armo tuning in from Thailand.
Hello, everyone. What's up?
All right, all right. So we have a topic here today where we're going to be talking about support and resistance. Now, support and resistance is truly, truly fascinating because all the indicators that have been talked about, moving averages, supply and demand, all kinds of indicators that you use, whether it be Fibonacci or a fan or anything like that, as you get deeper and deeper into your trading, would you guys not agree that it comes down to how good is your support and resistance?
Sort of, I guess.
Yeah, that's what we want to talk about today is support and resistance really that important? And if so, how is it important? Where can it be useful to a trader's career, to any trader's career? So let's take it with you, Lucas. Let's start with you. What would you say on support and resistance? What is your take on it? What have you learned from it? Do you still use it? One question.
I guess it's a very important tool, but it's also very important to know how or where is the right place to draw your support and resistance, because anyone can draw a line on a chart, right?
Right.
Anyone can connect two dots and it's going to be support resistance. So I guess it's how you identify strong support resistance that really matters. And I usually think of support resistance as a magnet. So they tend to attract price, but if it's a good support resistance as well, they tend to repel the price as well, as price gets towards those kind of area. So yeah, in my trading, support and resistance plays an important role.
Okay. Very nicely said. Very nicely said. When you say magnet, I think I find that fascinating that it does pull it towards, it pulls price towards it, and then when it gets there, it pushes it away. It's like a slingshot, isn't it? Like pulls it back to it and it lets go, like flies away from it. Okay. Ian, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I think kind of going off of what Lucas said, I think it does play a big part in trading, but it's not the only aspect to trading. I think too many people, sometimes myself included, when I first started, we'll just look at that's the only thing to use, but it has to be used in context with each setup and each chart respectively. Not necessarily every support and resistance will work. So it's about learning all the other tools that go along with it, and then adding support and resistance, as part of the whole setup, from my experience,
right
on the trades.
Okay. Fair enough. Armo, any points you want to add to that?
Yeah, I really like support and resistance because when you look at the chart at first glance, they immediately pop out at you, and these are areas of interest. You see them immediately, and then when, as Ian said, you do the rest of the research, you read the story of the chart, and you can figure out, okay, which ones are actually important, which ones actually have a higher probability of working out, and do that slingshot effect that Lucas described. So yeah, I think they're really interesting, and as I said, it's one of the first things that pops out when you start looking at any new chart.
Okay. Yeah, so all of you guys tuning in, and those of you guys who are here live as well, I think there's like 200 plus people in here live tuning in and counting. One of the things that I wanted to bring your attention to is notice how when we asked many of the senior traders as that are here in the panel, their whole approach is we like support resistance. However, there's more layers to it. But what if you are starting off in trading and you're just getting started? Should you actually learn support and resistance? And the answer to that is yes. It's very, very important. But to do all the things that Ian, Lucas, and Armos talked about, where all the other added layered pieces, that comes with time. But support resistance on its own is extremely, extremely, extremely powerful. It's tested it's withstood time. As you guys already know, indicators will fade away. Mentors fade away, signal services fade away, automated robots fade away. Support and resistance is one thing that has been around from market to market, industry to industry. It's always been around. It is like a stepping stone of trading. You have to learn this. And doing it right is also a very, very important key piece. So today, what we're going to be doing is outside of this podcast, as soon as this podcast ends, what I'll do, as I normally do, is I'll turn it into a live webinar where I'll be going over how do you actually draw support and resistance? How do you make use of the information from it? So those of you guys who are tuning in from Spotify, Google Play, or anything like that, you'll find the link below this podcast. And those of you guys who are here live, stay tuned. We'll go directly into the webinar. So going deeper into this, Lucas, if I was to rewind your life a little bit and take you back and, before you became a trader and you were just as a developing trader where you were just finding your way through, if support and resistance was only there and not much other information, what kind of information would you pull off of it that would get you interested in, hey, this might be a trade? What would you be looking at support and resistance as? Like, how would you use it?
If I'm just starting out, I'll see certain area where there's a lot of price action coming in and out of.
Okay.
I guess as a beginner, I would then try and anticipate price to come towards those kind of zone and get a buy done if it's a support.
Okay.
Or, if it's pulling back to that kind of resistance area, get a sell done around those kind of area.
Okay. Would you agree with that, Armo? Is that how you would also look at it in terms of when it comes to trading around support resistance?
Yeah, I mean, it's what support and resistance is. It's areas of interest, areas where price plays a role. There's also the human psychology aspect to it. People remember that price because everyone can see it on the chart as well. So, it's something that you initially think like, oh yeah, I need to trade here, or I need to wait for price to come here and then I trade.
Right. Okay, Ian, how about this? So how were you drawing support and resistance in the past? Like where would you feel, where did you feel that this is how I'm supposed to draw it? Like what made you?
Well, I think honestly, when I first started, I had more horizontal lines on my chart than vertical lines. If you're looking at the candles, because it's like, I think we've all just looked at a chart and they're everywhere, right? Like,
right.
There's little walls here, little walls there, and you're like, well, I better draw a line there. That they must all be important, right? And then before you know it, you're like, which one is more important? Then you're confused, and then you're taking trades off every one, and then it's like it can be a real mess, especially when you're first started, for sure. So that was my experience anyway.
Yeah.
You just have to color code it, man.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I had the red ones. The red ones are the important, and then the yellow ones not so important. So
and then you include different time frames as well so different color codes for different time frames.
Yeah.
It can get messy. Okay, let's put it this way. So for all of you guys here on the panel and all of you guys who are here live, I want you guys to answer this question. How many times have you drawn support and resistance? You've taken your time drawing it and you're like, this looks pretty accurate. Prices shoot away as they pull back into that support that you had drawn. They get to that level, they respond, and they launch. And you're like, my goodness, this is perfect. I should be trading support and resistance. Yeah. And then another time comes around, you draw it as perfectly as can be. Prices come back to that support, you buy it, and it's not launching. It's not launching. And then it launches. And you're like, oh, beautiful trade. I'm only going to trade support and resistance. And then there's times where you draw the line, prices come back to that support, it holds, and then it crashes right through. And you're like, well, that was a stop out. I don't get it. What happened this time? How many of you guys had experienced that when it comes to support and resistance?
Yeah, I think I think knowing how to draw them is really important, because I think 50% of the time, if you just close your eyes and put a line on the chart, it's gonna connect somehow, some way if you scroll towards the left.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It will. It will. And that is a known fact in the industry, among the professionals. If you draw any horizontal line on your chart at any price point, it is a support and resistance. It is one. Whether it's a good one or not, that becomes something that we can discuss. So in your eyes, let's say, Ian, now that you're a little bit more experienced, what would you say is a good support and resistance?
A good one to me now, a good support resistance is one that fits with the rest of my analysis. So it's like, if I do the rest of my analysis, like my fundamentals, everything that's taught in obviously all our courses, and it all lines up with those support and resistance, those will be the ones that I'll focus on more so than just any random one that's out there. So it's like, and it's more of a comfort, not a confirmation. It's just part of the tools that I use
Okay.
in an overall story. So,
Okay. Okay. What about you, Lucas?
Well, I can't really answer that without giving out what, the course is supposed to teach us, right?
It's like, well, let's say I open those doors and I'm like, okay, speak freely if you may, because people are tuning in and they're curious of, well, how do you do support resistance different now? What makes you attracted to a certain level per se?
I think volume
Okay.
is one of the main, indicator of a good support resistance.
Right.
How price moves away from the support or resistance initially.
Okay. Okay. So the strength of the area. Okay. So these are all fascinating things that you guys are talking about. Is whether it's Ian saying it revolves around his analysis, or Armo saying how it responds from a certain level, how price has previously responded from that certain level, or how Lucas is saying based on the volume around that level. Notice how not one of them says, I don't use support resistance anymore. It is that critical. It will stay with you forever and ever and ever. That's how important support and resistance is. And this is the whole point of this podcast, is to bring attention and the focal point in. Let's make sure you're doing it right. If you're new, then let's make sure you learn how to do this once and for all. If you're a veteran, let's clean it up a little bit in case you've been around in the industry for so long but haven't gotten your support resistance cleaned up a bit. And then we'll go deeper and deeper into it of how can you actually use this in your favor. So let me spin the question around in a different way now for all of you guys. Okay, Armo, let's start with you on this one. So what happens, how many times have you noticed a trade not work and there is not a level there? Like you're trying to do a buy, but there is no support and resistance there and the buy actually fails. How often does that happen?
Well, that happens as well. Like you can have failed trades when there is a level. You can have failed trades when there's no level. What
are the probabilities? What about for the rest of you guys? What are the probabilities of if there is no level and you're attempting a trade? What is the success rate, would you say, for those trades?
it's pretty low. Like it's pretty low in my like one.
it's lower,
Even though I
yeah.
said it's a tool, actually the levels are probably one of the main things that we focus on with our trading to make sure we're trading off of a good level to give us something to work off of. So when they're just out in the open, you don't know, 100% for sure.
Yeah. So why do we need these levels? Why are these levels so important? What makes us say if the prices come back down to it, I should do my buys based on whatever purpose, whether it's my moving averages or stochastics or MACD or whatever gets me in. But if I'm around a support and resistance area, there's that certain level of confidence that kicks in. But what is it about the support and resistance that makes a person feel comfortable?
It's a memory of price. Like people remember that price from the last time price was there because clearly something happened there or from there.
Right.
Clearly some big boy was loading off or loading on. And what we try to do as like smaller boys is to sail with that or surf on that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where the things become really, really fascinating. Using that support and resistance, we're able to launch off a certain area. That increases the probability of your trade, going up like 10x, versus just randomly trading in mid sky and thinking a buy should work from here. Okay, it becomes very, very hard to do that. All right, so let's twist it around a little bit. Support and resistance that has a range on or around it, is that more powerful than without it?
We're all nodding.
Yeah, I know those people who are tuning in, they cannot see you shaking your heads. It's like, is that a yes?
They can't hear my nodding.
Only if you break your neck.
Oh, okay. I'll nod really hard next time.
So yeah, so those that's 3 nods, all from all of the guys. That's 3 nods. So yeah. So it really emphasizes of how strong a level can become from a buildup of candles around a level and then a release from the area. Okay, that really makes the support and resistance really, really powerful. At least from the years and years I've been doing this. If you put me in a position saying, Naveen, gun to your head, I want you to trade without this level, but use everything in your power that you can, I'm telling you right now, I will be half as efficient as I would be if I had the level. That's how important this is. That's how important this is. That's why I wanted to make a whole webinar or a podcast around this topic of, can we bring the focus back to this basic item of support resistance? Or is people just going to ignore it thinking, oh, this is simple basic stuff, I learned this in day 1 of what is Forex or what is stocks or what is futures. Yeah. I think it's very important to iron out these basic necessities. So, Lucas, let's do it again. If you were to teach your younger self, not that you're old now, but if you were to teach your even younger self in the past about support and resistance, what key pieces of information would you tell him?
I'll tell him to look at how price are reacting from support resistance, how traders are taking actions around those levels.
Okay.
And see when does those trader who took action at those support resistance actually get, so-called trap. In a way, those kind of level becomes much stronger. If I tell my younger self about that, I'm just hoping that he understood what I just said.
All right. Fair enough. Ian, without being influenced by Lucas's younger self, what would you tell your younger self?
Well, again, not to go over the same thing, but I have to get the proper education to know what is the proper support and resistance to use. Another key thing that I don't think we brought up yet either is too many people spend time drawing their line exactly perfect on their support or their resistance, when I've kind of found over time it's not really an exact price per se. It's more of kind of an area. So it's kind of like, don't get too hung up on an exact price, just kind of like find that good support, that good resistance. And in that area, then you have to read the price action in that area to know when it's ready or not ready. So.
Okay. Armel, would you agree with that? Would you teach yourself the same thing?
Well, to add what Ian said, particularly in Forex, because it's not a centralized market, the pinpoint price doesn't really matter because each broker has more or less its own pricing.
Right.
So what's a pinpoint price for, one broker's chart means nothing for another one, or it's like a few pips off or half a pip off or something. But what I would teach my younger self is to not underestimate something like support and resistance, because it is what enables us to read the story of the market. Because if the market was just all smooth moves and no ranges or any hesitations or price buildups anywhere, we wouldn't have any story to read and no puzzle to figure out.
Right.
And support and resistance enables us to actually figure it out and take action with that.
Right, right. I think if I was to doing the same thing, I would piggyback on that a little bit, and I would actually say one thing to myself, sort of to remind myself, if prices are going up and they pull back to support and you buy, and prices go up, they pull back to support and you buy, just remember that rhythm can only last so long because the markets cannot just keep buying forever.
Yeah.
That's something that took me ages to understand. I'm like, but I did all the work. But the market's like, screw your work. Your work doesn't matter. I can't keep going uptrend my whole life. You know, I have to change and flow and do different things. You know, it can't just keep going that same design over and over and over and over again. And that sort of, you know, took me a long time of, but I learned this, therefore it must. But I learned this, therefore it must. And that sort of mentality never worked. It never worked.
And even if you do understand it, that the markets can not go up forever, it's still, at least for me, I don't know about you guys, but at least for me, it took some time to really let go of that hope of, yeah, oh, this time I can still get away with it. Or this time I can still get away with it. It can still go higher. I'll be lucky. You know, using that hope, it doesn't work.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Hope is a dangerous word in trading, actually.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing that was very common in my early days. In fact, I say it's very common in a lot of the students that come into Urban Forex in the initial early stages. How many candles back must I look at to draw my support and resistance?
Classic.
Yeah, because for some reason I wanted that definitive answer. And if a future Naveen would be like, you want to look at the flow of the market and see where exactly you want to draw your support and resistance line, that to me would sound like, I don't know what this Confucius guy is saying. It sounds very hocus pocus. Tell me exactly how many candles do I need to draw the line on? Because I'm more, you know, tell me what to do. Don't talk in circles. But it took me ages to get through that process to be like, there is no exact number of candles. It's so fascinating to realize that it ends up in this weird language of where a new person is always confused of like, I don't get it. You know, how do I do this exactly? So unfortunately, one of the things that I think all of our younger selves will probably praise us for at this stage is thank you for staying put. I think that's the one main thing that you have to go through in trading. Learn it the strict way by whatever you think is the rigid way to learn it, but you got to stay put to go through the understandings of actually there's more to it.
Yeah.
You have to allow that time. There's more to it. And when that curiosity opens up for, well, what more is there to it? And that's when your journey begins. But you got to start somewhere. So start with learning the rigid method. You want to draw your lines exactly like this. Okay? Doesn't matter how it is. You want to draw it exactly like this. In fact, you want to use a blue color marker to draw it. You learn it however you want to learn it. You're going to end up at the same place as every other professional trader, which is your curiosity will open up and it will take you down the rabbit hole, which will then show you new things. So you just got to give in to that then and go down that hole. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. What shade of blue was that again?
Sorry?
Just the color code of the blue line. What was that again?
So that it's a cyan blue, and you want to use 12 candles exactly on the hourly charts. Yeah. And you want to make sure support when you draw that line, make sure and when you draw it all the way across, it goes through Aussie USD all the way into USD Japanese yen. You know, that line better go all the way through. So yeah. I used to do all kinds of stuff. I used to learn when I used to learn trend lines. I used to always get in trouble by my seniors at the time telling me, stop trying to go through data. Stop trying to go through data. And I'm like, but you told me this is support and resistance angular. But support resistance, I go through data. What about that, huh? And man, they used to get so red, like as if I'm gonna get a black eye soon, but I just didn't get it. Like I just had to go through that process of, I have no idea what you're talking about. Why so many rules for this thing, but no rules for this thing? And it's just as you go through it, you start to understand, okay, the olden gray-haired masters are not so weird after all. You know, they do have something under their belt. And what actually happened to me, which actually took me down the wrong path longer, is then I started to listen to younger folks with less knowledge and a more definitive answer. Unfortunately, the definitive younger folks and their answers took me down the wrong path. And I was in that path 5 years plus because they didn't know what they were talking about. And I'm learning from a rigid method, which is first you do this, then you do that, therefore this. I get that. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I went down that path.
Yeah, it's the attractive solution, which isn't really the solution that takes you to your goal.
Yeah. So I thought it was fascinating. I was like, well, I can do this. I mean, I felt I'm smarter than most people. When I was younger, let me rephrase that. When I was younger, that's what I thought. It was like, when I was younger, I had this very high confidence level of I got this. And here comes this little bullet points of 4 steps to do to become a millionaire. And I was like, yes, forget college. I can do this. I'm going to go down these 4 steps. I'm going to do this all day. And then the curiosity spiked, saying, you know what? There's more to it. And again, it was luckily for that over-flared confidence that kept me put and saying, you know what? Let all the monkeys do the 4 steps. I need 5 steps. I need 6 steps. And that path just went on and on and on until it actually unfolded in it's not steps. The steps will ever change based on what you need at the time. And that was, I think that was the eye opener around support and resistance for me. It's not a rigid system. Yeah.
I guess for trading as a whole, most things are, don't really have a rigid system. But then again, because from an outsider point of view, how the market looks so random, that's why, us humans are automatically attracted to why, we need a rigid way to approach and tackle the market. But, unfortunately, what makes sense in the real world doesn't really make much sense in the markets.
Oh, yeah. Talking about that, I got a perfect example for a rigid system. I can give you a 3-step process on how to talk to your spouse. Will it work?
I'm not interested.
Yeah. It's like, if you want to get in trouble, then listen to those 3 steps. You can't do a rigid system. And you can't be that rigid parent either, saying, oh, if I just read this book, I will learn how to raise my child to be an excellent doctor one day or whatever one day. You can't follow that step by step. Every case is very unique to itself that requires unique approach. But you need to know what those rigid steps are to know which one to use and how to use it, right?
Yeah, I think there's no such thing as a rigid system, not in trading and not in anything in life. As long as you have a system that you are rigid with, I think that's kind of what you want to go for.
Yeah. We sort of have a rigid process at Urban Forex, right? There's sort of like a religious way we follow certain things, but each of those things that we follow is so in depth. There's so much to it, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't always look exactly the same either, which is, like it's the same, but it doesn't, people are looking for a pattern or like a shape or something like that, but it doesn't always give you that exact, it's always a little bit different each time. So.
Yeah. I can tell you this. I remember when the first time when we were gathering in Koh Samui in Thailand, when we had our Urban Forex event. And I recall Lucas coming up to me and he had this chart drawn on his computer. And he's like, so Naveen, if I get a pullback like this and I buy from here, is that what I'm supposed to do? It's I think my exact response was in my head was like, don't say no, it'll crush his dreams. So so I put my arm around him. I'm like, not really, but let me explain more. And that conversation went on for like 15 minutes. And then he was like, oh, okay, got it. And then he pulls up another chart and he does it exactly step by step on that one. He's like, so like this? I'm like, oh, no, don't say no, Naveen. It's going to crush his dreams. So these were the early moments when Lucas was training. And he also had that rigid, like, I got this. And how do you feel now, Lucas, years and years down the line now?
Oh, for a long time, even when you were beside me saying not to be rigid, in my head, I still thought I have to be rigid, because I think that's just how we are wired to be. But yeah, it's really important to go through that process, knowing that trading in a very rigid style doesn't always work, but knowing how to trade with the flow, that works a lot better.
Yeah. And that's the fun part. I think some of the statements out there that are I think they're correct when they say trading is more of art and music rather than engineering and science.
Yeah.
Like,
If it
you
was
gotta
engineering
understand
and
it.
science, if it was engineering and science, like the whole thing would have been taken over by robots and automated trading systems.
Yes.
And that's not the case.
Oh, and which we're very close to with the AIs and stuff. They're really scary because they're very artistic. So the AIs are very, very good, very, very good. Okay, so taking this forward. So again, those of you guys who are tuning in and you're not here live, we're gonna move this into a webinar. The link will be below this podcast. Anything you guys want to add, Lucas, Ian, Armo?
Not really. Just to not underestimate the power of support and resistance. It is, if used in the right way, it can be very powerful.
Absolutely.
To use.
Absolutely. So. I have a feeling those of you guys who are watching this for the podcast on YouTube per se, I think you guys can let me know in the comments below that if you actually focused on support and resistance or more about rigidness or not rigidness, because I have a feeling we went rigid or not rigid a lot in this podcast rather than support and resistance, but we'll do purely support and resistance in the webinar coming up. So thank you guys so much here on the panel, Lucas, Ian, and Armo. It's always a pleasure. Thank you guys for always being here. And I'll take it from here and turn this into a webinar.
All right. Enjoy, everyone.
Great. Yeah, enjoy, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.